Linda works at BYU. She's an expert on career and resumes today. She has a lot of things she can talk about, though. So we're sort of picking one thing from a list of many things. She teaches a career development class, two classes, that covers a whole range of topics, so that if you, especially if you're casting about and not knowing how to pursue a career, you might want to go take the student development class.
117 and 317. 117 is more for freshmen, sophomores, career exploration. 317 is more for juniors and seniors. It's called career strategies.
How to get a job, basically.
Yes.
Maybe, yeah. So, valuable.
You can still join up until Tuesday. So
Yeah, all right. Anything else I should say?
I'll introduce the website.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so I have till 5:30.
5:20 is
5:20.
officially
Okay.
when we're supposed to do that.
And I'll use this mic so I don't have to yell. Okay. Hi, guys. So that's my title. Oh, okay. There you go. And I'll show you the Career Services website at the end because you probably won't remember or be able to write down everything, and there are other resources to follow. So, resumes. Why do we have resumes? What is the goal with a resume? Why does Dr. Monson harp on it so much for your own good? I need participation in this. Thank you. You.
You need a resume to get a job.
To get a job. Okay, what comes before getting a job? Yes.
It allows an employer to get a chance to know you, what you're about, what kind of characteristics you have, and whether you're going to be a good fit for that job.
Yes, all of the above. What else? I'm kind of fishing for an answer. I don't usually do this, but yes.
What about you need to get an interview?
Yes, ding, ding, ding. Okay, so you need to get an interview before you get another interview likely, and then maybe another interview, and then a job offer, and then you decide if you want the job, right? And then you accept, and then you get the job. So there's a lot of steps, but the resume is the first step. So that's why it's really important, because first impressions, you can't really redo them, right? So I'm going to go over some stats first. So just read these as I click on them, and as you read them, think, what does that mean for me? Because of this stat, what does that mean I have to do, okay? And then I want some people to talk after. Okay, some of these are pretty straightforward, but what are your thoughts? Yes?
Grateful, my email is just my name.
Okay, yeah, so if you have some fun emails, like today I saw a Lord of the Rings fan at gmail.com, that's fine, just don't use it on your resume. A hand over here.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing. It's really easy to get a professional email, like forwarding to whatever you have.
Yeah, you could forward it too. Anything else? I mean, there's lots here. What else can you imply back there? Uh-huh.
Details on our resumes that we'll be creating during this term will help us to have a better chance doing well in interviews. As based on the stats talks about, you know, the small intricacies like in grammar or upper left-hand corner.
Yeah, details are very important. Like, Dr. Monson's going to scrutinize each and every one of your resumes for your own good, right? Because you want to get all the errors out before it reaches an employer. Other things, make sure your online presence is professional as well. So go make things private that you don't want employers to see. Make sure you have multiple people proofread it for errors, grammatical mistakes, and also formatting. So that's the first glance. Like when you look at a piece of paper, a document, if it looks messy, if it looks cluttered, if it looks too dense, if it looks unorganized, no one's going to even try to read it. They're not going to be like, let me see what this really means. No one's going to put any effort into it, okay? So you want to make it easy to read, and then the reader will go in and actually look at the words.
I'm going to add that every time I've had a student bring a draft resume to me, I have given that feedback, that they haven't thought through the formatting, the spacing, the typeface, and that they need to think about that more, because they can't tell me why they chose what they chose.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of people use templates, which is okay, but you need to make sure the template works for you and you're not just trying to conform your life into the template. Because most templates are very restricting. They don't have enough space for you to put all the details you need. They're often kind of too playful. Like, you have to make sure that you're going into the right industry. So you shouldn't have too many colors or graphics unless you're going into arts and media. And then up here on the upper right corner, 5 to 7 seconds, that's really, really short, right? So that's at the initial glance. If your resume looks easy to read and you have some experience that looks relevant, then they might put it in the look at later pile. But there's usually multiple levels of sifting. So the first level is like, nope, too messy, don't want to read it. Second level, nope, irrelevant experience, don't want to read it. And then the third level is like, okay, now we have like several here that have the relevant background and skills. Let's see who's best. Let's see who we want to interview. Does that make sense? Okay, let's see. Did I cover everything here? Okay, moving on. Formatting, which is how it looks. So stick to one page for now. You're all college students. You don't have as much life experience yet. Maybe after 5 to 10 years, you can have a 2-page resume. Unless you're applying to federal jobs, which their resumes are very tedious and long, right? You have to include like your wage and your supervisor's name and like all sorts of details. But other than that, keep it to one page. Keep it to 10 to 12 size font. Use readable fonts. Don't try to be too fancy. Readability is key. If they can't read it, they won't read it. And don't use too large or too small of margins. We can tell. I mean, first of all, you want to make sure it prints, right? That when it prints, it doesn't get cut off anywhere. So keep it to no less than 1/2 inch and not too wide, because then it looks like you don't have much experience to fill your resume. Use bullets, not paragraphs or complete sentences. So resumes are their own genre of writing. And if we look at the bigger umbrella of writing, writing is one of the forms of communication. And what makes communication effective is knowing your audience, knowing what they're looking for, what they need to know. So employers don't have very much time. They have dozens of applications, maybe hundreds to look through. So you want to make sure that it's easy to scan. It's scannable. They can look for keywords. I'll go through lots of examples. And then list it in reverse chronological order, not in the order that you think is most relevant, unless, well, I'll talk about that. But always start with the most recent experience and then go backwards. Do not list references. Don't say references upon request at the bottom. That's an old, like, I don't know, custom, but it's really out of date, so don't do that. Okay, so now we're gonna go over a bunch of sections, what the maximum best kind of resume would be like. So these are general principles with examples. You might have seen a lot of resumes with objectives or summaries or profiles at the top. I personally hate them. I think they're a waste of space. Unless you have a really complicated, long background, which none of you do because you're young, and that helps literally summarize it. But otherwise, it's really just fluff and takes up space. So, for example, I've already crossed it out. These are bad examples. To help people and to find a job that will use my skills. That's really generic, doesn't tell them anything about you. Right, so every single thing on your resume should tell them something about you. They don't know anything about you except what's on this paper or, digitally. And then a bad summary is like hardworking team player looking for full-time job after graduation. And you're probably like, what's wrong with that? It's true, but that doesn't matter. It still doesn't tell anything about you because every person who's applying to the job is looking for a job. So if you're like, I need a job, I like helping people, that's pretty much everyone. So
that is totally empty and useless.
Exactly. I love your inserts. It's great. So you don't want to say anything that you can't prove. The best way to show how good you are on your resume is to give facts and let them realize for themselves, oh, this person's obviously a hard worker because look at all these details, and we'll go over more details. So here are some better objectives and summaries if you must include them. Can I have somebody read these out loud? Thank you.
Objective: to use my persuasive communication skills to help develop nonprofit organizations in Africa and Asia. Summary: motivated graphic designer with 2.5 years of experience in website design, also passionate about commercial photography.
Thank you. So anybody can answer, what makes these better than those? At least acceptable. Yes?
Yeah, they're really specific. They describe like the specific place he wants to go and what specific skills he's using, things like that.
Yeah, so you want to help the employer help you, right? The employer wants to hire good people who are passionate and self-motivated to do the work that they are hiring them to do. So if you show that your interest matches the job's description, then they're much more likely to want to interview you and move you through the process. Was there a hand back there? Other hands?
A better approach than including these is to read the job description and alter the description of your experience
Mm.
to give details about what you've done that speak to what they're looking for. Instead of stating it up here, I agree with you, these are useless. I would try to do that in terms of how I describe my previous experience.
Yes, so there's lots of ways to tailor your resume. I'll cover that more at the end. Contact info is the basic stuff at the top. It's your header, basically. And you should use the same header for your resume and your cover letter so it looks like branded, like your branded documents. And when they have them side to side, it's easy to see, oh, these two go together. Use the same font, same spacing, same size, same header on both resume and cover letter. But basically, you need your name, you need your email and phone number, and you don't need to say email : phone number : just have email, phone number. And then you don't need to put your address anymore. That's also become outdated because nobody mails things anymore. And street addresses are a way to kind of discriminate candidates, like, oh, that person's too far, that person lives in a bad neighborhood, that person lives in a rich neighborhood, that whatever. So just don't include your street address. If you want to include your city and state, that's fine. And then always have an updated LinkedIn profile with an abbreviated URL. So the URL LinkedIn gave me was like linda.evans number. But you can go in there and change that to something shorter, take out the numbers. Feel free to raise your hand at any point because I go really fast. Okay, education section should be next because you're all students, and when you graduate, you'll be recent students. So this is the most relevant for now, until maybe like a couple years after you graduate, and then you can put education below your work experience. But for now, keep education at the top. Don't include any high school information unless you're a freshman. And your degree and major. So not just like bachelor's in political science, Bachelor of Science in political science. So either Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science, and then your degree. And then you can put your emphasis if you want. That might be a good way to distinguish yourself.
If you're a political science major, is it a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science degree? Arts, yeah. Don't make that mistake. Turn in your final resume.
Yeah, you want to check.
Know the answer to that one.
You want to check because psychology is a BS and political science is a BA, and so just check online. Include your minor if you have one. Definitely include BYU, spell it out. And if you want to use BYU throughout your resume, put parentheses BYU after Brigham Young University, and then you can just say BYU after that. Graduation date, so you can put expected and then the month and year. You don't need to put when you started. You only need to do that for your jobs and volunteer experience. And then optional, if your GPA is pretty high, like above a 3.5-ish, you can put that. But if it's not very high, you don't need to put it. It's optional. Unless the employer specifically asks you to, then you need to. And then relevant coursework is any classes you've taken that is related to the job. And just put the name of the class. Don't put like Spanish 471, blah, blah, blah. Just put the name of the class. And edit that according to the job. And then study abroad, if you did that, you can add the classes you took on that. Any questions so far? Okay. So this is what it might look like. Also the location of your school. So it's just an example. Okay, experience bullets are the meat and potatoes of your resume. They have to be really good. if it looks clean, but the bullets are flimsy, then you're not going to get an interview probably. So general rules are have a bullet for each skill set. Think in terms of what you can do. So don't try to squeeze too many skills into one bullet, and also don't have multiple bullets saying mostly the same thing. We'll have examples. And then start each bullet with a different action verb. So don't start with nouns or adjectives or adverbs. Hopefully you know what all that is. So don't start with like efficiently, blah, 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 or like successfully, blah, blah, blah. Just state the verb. Just state what you did. And use present tense unless it's past tense. But when it's present tense, just have, I forget what it's called every time. Just like say organize, not organizes, or organizing. Just the verb. I think it's like present perfect, maybe. No acronyms because you don't want to be, what's the word? I can't remember the word. But you want everybody to understand what you've done. So acronyms can confuse people and leave them in the dark. Be specific, just like some examples we saw. We're going to see more. Quantify, quantify, quantify. We want to have like a visual image of what you've done. Like I said, the readers likely have never met you, don't know what you are capable of doing and what you've done in the past. So give numbers in multiple ways. I'll show, I'll just show examples. It's easier. Come on. Okay. So you want to start out with the position title and the organization name. So I say organization, not company, because it could be a nonprofit, it could be government. And then you have the dates that you worked there, the month and the year. If you worked summer jobs for multiple years, you can put like May through August 2016, 2017, 2019. So you don't have to write it all out every time. And then the city and state. And think in terms of skills and accomplishments. So rather than just rewriting or like copy and pasting the job description, think of what you personally accomplished there. For example, so this is one way to format it. So use different formatting to distinguish parts of your resume. So for example, the organization names are always bolded or underlined or capitalized. The titles are always italicized. The dates are always on the right. It helps guide the reader's eyes if it's not different all over the place. And you don't want to have it all plain. So you do want to use some formatting, bolding, underlining, italicizing, caps, parentheses, dashes. I'll show some examples.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah.
So one mistake I commonly see from students, that this is the bullet points is the hardest part.
Yes.
The formatting is all stuff that with enough time and effort you can fix, if you kind of know what it should look like. But the bullet points are just hard to write. What I see students doing, and so this skills and accomplishments is a little bit deceptive, because what you tend to do is just write a list of what you did at the job, and that's not what you want to do. That's maybe the first step to getting to eventually what you want to do, but you notice here, what she's got is statements that quantify things and then describe things in a way that allow me to make inferences about her.
Okay, I'll go over those.
Good.
Okay, thank you. I sped through that too quickly. So notice that each bullet starts with an action verb, and they're different, so try not to repeat the same action verbs within a job. You can use them in different jobs. But so there's different ways to write numbers. You can do like that squiggly line to show approximation, because most of you will not remember, right? Like how many customers did I serve? How many students did I help? I don't know. Just estimate. You can do a range, like 3 to 4, 3 to 400. You can do a minimum, so like I know it's at least 20, right? So you can put 20 plus. And then other things, teach students in presentations on career topics. So a lot of students might stop there, like teach students in presentations. But what the next line shows is the expertise of, the person the resume is for. And you want to give not just what you're able to do, but what you know. And then the next one, organize events. A lot of students stop there as well. I organize this many events. But what was the goal of the events? What were you trying to accomplish? And it doesn't matter if you did a perfect job accomplishing that every time, but it's like, what were you striving for to show your intent? And then the next one, advise students on personal branding to increase competitiveness. So same thing. You can the word to is very useful in bullet points. So you have the verb and some kind of quantification, and then maybe like the aim. And this is not a perfect formula, but it's a good formula. Supervise student assistant in designing and distributing event. So always think like try to paint a picture, right? If you're an employer and you're like, okay, I really want to know what this student or what this candidate can do, you need to give them lots of details to fill in all the gaps. Anything you want to add?
Anytime you can use the word promoted
Oh yeah.
is good.
Yeah, so if you've been promoted, don't just like collapse that and make it seem like you just had one position. You can say promoted to assistant director after 6 months or something like that.
Showing that you were promoted quickly, or that you did a lot of something, or that you did it, showing evidence that you were successful because you got an Employee of the Month award, or a,
Yeah.
so all of this kind of thing is evidence that instead of saying I was really good at sales, you allow the sales award to speak for you, or the volume of sales, or the fact that you increase sales this much over this period of time.
Yep.
Say, oh, well, he must be really good at it because he got really good at it. He got better.
Yeah.
Or he was promoted quickly, so he must have been good. Or he trained people, so he must have known what he was doing, or they wouldn't have
Right.
hired him to train.
Anytime you have a leadership experience, you want to emphasize that. And so I like to think of, you want to make it obvious to the reader. So instead of saying, I'm a hard worker, you just give all the facts to make it undeniable that you are a hard worker. Okay, I'll have more examples. So there are different ways to organize your experience. The most basic way I like is having relevant experience and then other experience. That way you can put the things that you want them to see first at the top. So you can do that. Oops. I skipped something. Okay, you can have employment experience versus volunteer experience, so paid versus unpaid. I don't think that's as valuable unless you had a lot of like leadership positions in your volunteer positions. But otherwise, I think it might be better to stick with relevant and other. If you have research experience and you want to go into research, at least 2 to have a section just for that, then highlight that, as well as leadership experience. And then again, other experience. So these are things that like you do just because you need money, not necessarily because like it feeds your career. So if you worked in custodial, or you worked in fast food, or something that seems like kind of menial, but it still shows that you can get hired. It shows you have skills. It shows that you were able to take instructions, that maybe you were able to work on a team. There's a lot of great skills in every job. So don't leave things out unless you run out of room.
My rule of thumb for a different kind of header, a subheader, or a different experience header would be, if you have more than one thing to list under that header, then it's okay to have that header. If you only have one thing to list, then maybe just having an global experience header is good enough.
Yeah. And again, I'll have examples. Okay, so we're going to go through some examples of like really bad, okay, and best bullets. So I'm going to need some readers. Can I have someone who hasn't read yet? Have you read?
I haven't.
Okay, go ahead.
Poor, help set up events. Meh, planned social events for clubs. Best, organized 4 events for 12 student organizations per semester to support community causes.
Thank you. So these are all describing the same thing in different ways, right? What did you notice between the 3 different examples?
They dive deeper. They have numbers to quantify, and it also shows sort of the motivation, the best, whereas poor and the so-so didn't really explain that.
Yeah, thank you. Behind you.
To me, like, the poor one, in my mind, goes to like, okay, well, did you like set up chairs in the ballroom?
Yeah, you don't know.
And then the best one is like, okay, they were obviously like in charge of a lot of things. And
Organize is way stronger than helped.
Yeah, so avoid generic words like helped or assisted or responsible. Okay, I'll get to that. But like avoid those words, because if you helped do something, then you did it, right? So instead of saying helped organize, blah, 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 just say organized with team of 7. If you don't want to take all the credit, you want to be like super honest and open about like, hey, I was just like part of a team, then you can say organized with blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense? So instead of just saying assisted in organizing, because that makes it sound weaker. If you start out with the exact verb, it comes across stronger. Okay, who can read next? In the back, thank you.
Ran cash register, managed cash transactions, and best ensured accurate financial transactions while providing quality customer
Why are you laughing? What do you think? What? Can somebody raise their hand and say what they're thinking? I just hear a lot of muttering. Thank you.
It seems like it's just, you're taking something and just saying like, more detailed exactly what you did, exactly, and adding words that show the way that you did it in such a way that will help prove your character skills. So it's not just, opening and closing cash register, it's I'm taking care to make sure that I'm doing this right.
Yes, I love that. That was so beautifully put. Could have put that in a quote box. So I like what you said as well in the blue shirt about motivation, right? Because if you just list your job description, you have no idea how well that person did that job, just that they were supposed to do that. But this shows insured. Insured is a very ownership word, right? Like I made sure that this was done right. And quality customer service, so not just get them in and out the door, but make sure that they feel welcome and treated well, and will probably come back. And what employer doesn't want that? Somebody cares.
This is a hard one because you're kind of asserting that you're good at it, and there's not a lot of evidence provided, but it's hard to come up with that evidence for a job like this. So I think this is about as good as it gets.
Yeah.
If the job was doing some kind of data entry or something where you're trying to ensure accuracy, and there's some metric of your accuracy that you could provide,
That would be best.
that would be even better.
Yes.
Right? So
True.
I don't know that there's a metric here unless you were, employee of the month at the cash register 12 months in a row or something.
Yeah, and that's not always measurable because your employer might not keep track of that. So a lot of the times it's out of your control. So you're gonna have to just do the best you can. Yeah, if you can get numbers, get numbers. So I like to ask how many customers went through the store per day? Do you know? And they're like, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000. Okay, just put 2,000 to 3,000, right? Or maybe the size of the store, maybe how much cash you handled that day. So handled from $10,000 to $12,000 in cash per week. That helps. So maybe I should write a new example. Thank you for that. Okay, next reader, please. Thank you. And then you can read the next one.
Responsible for sales, meh. Sold pest control, best. Conducted door-to-door sales to 150 to 200 homes per week, closed 58% of contacts.
Thank you. So what does that tell you about the person, the best example? What can you infer from that? You or anybody?
Keep track of numbers.
So they're detailed, right? What else? Yes.
They're persuasive. They closed a winning number of.
Yes, persuasion skills are wanted by every single employer.
Now, if the percentage was, 18%, you might not want to put it.
Yeah, don't put that.
18% was the highest of this whole team. Say that instead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe 18% is really good. We don't know.
Right.
Make it
So never lie, but only highlight your best qualities, best skills and experience. So you can also probably imply that this is a hard worker, right? That they are very diligent and they don't give up, because who likes door-to-door sales? I mean, very few people in the world are naturally good at it and enjoy it. So you can probably say wow, this person can do anything that they put their mind to. Okay, last one. You had your hand? Thanks.
More strong leadership and teamwork skills. Meh. Developed leadership skills as camp counselor. Best. Led group 10U pages 13, 15 through outdoor activities to build resilience, independence, and social skills. And we
Okay, thank you. So I've had a lot of students say, isn't that too many words? Aren't I being too wordy? Right? Some of you are like, yeah, that's too many words. But none of these words are fluff. Each word adds something. Each word tells something different about this person. So if you do have words that are redundant or repetitive, take them out. But don't be afraid to give details in order to paint the picture, like I said. So that paints a really strong picture, right? The poor version, you have no idea what the context is. You need to provide the context for your skills. And then the meh one is okay, I know they're a camp counselor. I generally know what camp counselors do, but I don't know it as well as with this example, where it's okay, these are young teenagers. They're probably really hard to deal with in large groups, and this was over a week, not just a weekend. So this person is very patient, probably, and very organized, and also good at keeping rules and enforcing rules, and so you can kind of figure out a lot of things if you
Somebody
give more
trusted
details.
This person with kids in the
Very trustworthy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's a trustworthy
Yeah,
person.
are you a parent? You probably read that very differently than us. Awesome. Okay, so church service, a lot of you have served missions, and don't leave that out because that has a lot of great transferable skills. And here are some ways to write about it, because you want to kind of filter out the super insular religious words that are confusing to everyone else outside of the church. So here are some examples. Same rules apply. Write about it as if it's a job. Start with verbs, quantify as much as possible, and be specific. So the first one is about planning workshops, and the audience is a pretty big audience, on what kind of skills. The second one, teaching to native speakers. So that's a way, well, like if you want to, instead of saying like teaching gospel principles, you can say teach abstract principles to native Spanish speakers, if you serve Spanish speaking. And then if you did service as well, I think that's valuable to add, providing like what kind of service you did. And then if you had any kind of leadership position, if you handled money, if you handled important documents, if you translated, add those in because that could be very valuable. And I'll show you a worksheet on our website to give you more instructions on how to write about church service.
Can I just say, you don't need to be afraid to have the name of the church, generally
Oh, yeah.
speaking.
Forgot about that.
I don't think that people react to that negatively. And I would kind of assert that if they harbor some bias, you might be better off not getting the interview and the job.
Yeah.
Frankly. I don't think the bias is so strong that you should be afraid of that at all. But
Yes.
I think there's pretty good evidence of that.
Yes, so you can leave the church's name if you know that it's kind of a hostile country to religion. You can just put religious organization, and I would avoid the word missionary because that has different connotations in other cultures and countries. Just put volunteer or volunteer representative if it's under experience. If it's under volunteer, don't put volunteer because that's redundant, right? So there's lots of options. Okay, research experience, if you've published anything or like worked for a professor, include that. And I like to just have the BYU acronym and then the department that you worked for. You don't need to put the professor's name unless they're really, really famous in the field and everybody knows them. But otherwise, don't need to put that. And be specific with what you did. So same rules apply, right? Action, verbs, quantification, be specific. What did you personally do in the research project? Most of the time you're working with a team. But we want to know what you did personally. And if you publish anything or participated in something that will be published, you can list that. So the name of the article and what journal or media it will be published in. Skills and awards, you can include that section if you want. If you don't have to have a section, but only include hard skills. So don't put soft skills like communication or creativity or things that can't be measured or proven. So put things like computer software, languages, any kind of certification like CPR, first aid, and it's okay if you don't have any. So if you have Microsoft Office, probably don't need to include that. That's assumed that you know that because you're a college student. And don't put it in phrases or sentences, just list the name of the program or skill. And stay current and honest. That means don't put anything that you can't do anymore. So if you got Photoshop training like 6 years ago and you don't remember anything, don't put that because they'll probably ask you to do it. And this is how you can organize it. I would do it by categories. So like maybe bold or underlined or capitalize the category and then list the skills and awards after that. Some people have an interest section. I don't know. I feel mixed about that. I think it's just a space fluff taker, unless it's really relevant to the job. So it's all about relevance, right? If you like to build model warships and you're applying to the Navy, then maybe that's relevant.
I would just add that on software, particularly statistical software, sometimes it's important to have a thing like you have on language that says how good you are at it.
Yeah.
So I think there's where the word proficient versus advanced versus basic might be necessary. If you want to say that you have some experience but you don't want to overstate it,
Yeah.
get yourself trapped in a situation where they're mad at you because you claim to be really good at R and in fact you're only
Meh.
basic knowledge. You probably, it's actually probably valuable to claim some basic knowledge because not very many people have that, and even basic knowledge would get you some attention.
Yeah. So that's why I have the language levels specified. If you've taken like an official language test or, you know, the certificate at BYU, then you can put that because that means something beyond campus. Presentations, I don't know how many of you done presentations at conferences and stuff, but I would recommend just putting the name of your presentation, the name of the event, year, and location. And publications, just put it in the style that your discipline uses, like a bibliography, and bold your name. If you're not sure what your format is, then go look at one of your professors' CVs on BYU's faculty pages. Final touches. Okay, so tailor it to the job. Like Dr. Monson said, you can look through the job description, see how, like, what kind of phrases and wording they use, and try to adjust yours to fit that. Like, don't just copy and paste, but try to use the words that they use. So instead of saying strong interpersonal skills, you could say, and they use like quality customer service, then you can use that instead of strong interpersonal skills because they mean similar things, but they have a different way of saying it. And you can delete things that are not relevant. I would always have a master resume, which is everything you've ever done, and then just take from there for the job. So you don't have to like, and then when you save resumes, save it under the date and or job description, job title. Don't just say resume updated, because like you'll lose track. So I always put the date that I last edited it. Be consistent in formatting, punctuation, spelling, fonts, and sizes. Does this class end at 5:30 or 5:20? 5:20. Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. We're almost done. Use past and present tense properly. So if you've finished a job, change it to past tense. Send as a PDF, never as a Word document or any other thing that's editable, because you want it to arrive the way that you intended it to look and not however their computer opens it. Proofread a lot. And use color with caution because, like Dr. Monson said, employers will likely print off your resume and likely in black and white to save money. So don't use colors that are too light, that are hard to read when you print it in black and white. Yeah?
Say use color with caution if you just don't.
If you don't use color, that's fine. This is a general presentation, so like some people will be like, but I work in graphic design. I'm like, okay, great. Just test it, printing black and white. Okay, I had some samples, but I want you to know, so Career Studio is where Dr. Monson wants you to go. It's in the main floor of the Wilk, just across from the Cougaree. In case you haven't noticed it, you've likely walked past it many, many times on the way to Jamba Juice or the Varsity Theater or the ballroom. And you can call to make mock interview appointments, but for resumes, you can just walk in anytime. Oh, and that's me.